Tonight, big decisions at the Capitol this week that have some people up in arms. And local law enforcement agencies are given the green light when it comes to pursuing criminals. Unfortunately, it still won't help you with your stolen car. Plus, a deadly substance known on the streets as the zombie drug has made its way to the White House.
The Spotlight brought to you by Beacon Plumbing.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm David Rose. And tonight we are putting a spotlight on some big decisions coming out of Olympia, starting with a change in the way guns are bought and sold, making Washington one of only 9 states to restrict and in most cases ban assault weapons. Also on the table, tougher restrictions for purchasing guns, including mandatory training and a 10-day waiting period. It's a measure that's been celebrated by gun control advocates and challenged by many Republicans. House Bill 1240 passed through the Senate with a 27-21 vote, and it's expected to land on the governor's desk sometime next week. The bill would ban the sale, manufacturing, and importing of assault weapons in the state of Washington, including more than 50 specific gun models, such as military-style weapons like AR-15s, AK-47s, and M16s, and any semi-automatic rifles with a length of less than 30 inches, and weapons with detached or fixed magazines with the capacity to hold 10 or more rounds. Those who oppose House Bill 1240 argue the ban violates both state and federal constitutions and predict it will not stop criminals or mass shootings.
The proponents of this bill want you to believe similar bans have been found constitutional. What they fail to mention is none of these laws have been upheld under the Bruin test, and there are currently at least 20 active court cases challenging similar bans under this new legal test, including right here in the Ninth Circuit. The passage of this bill will result in the inevitable expenditure of taxpayer dollars to defend its unconstitutionality.
On the other hand, advocates of the bill argue that statistics show gun deaths hit the highest mark last year in several decades, and that a law like this could prevent mass shootings and other similar events. Representative Strom Peterson, the primary sponsor of the bill, began introducing similar legislation starting 7 years ago. His own community was struck by tragedy when 3 people were killed and 1 was injured by a 19-year-old man at a house party in Mukilteo. He's hopeful this is the year that it will make it to the governor's desk.
We've regulated weapons in this country since the founding. You can't have fully automatic rifles. You can't have many other types of weapons. We think that this style of weapon, this was modeled after the M16. This is modeled after a weapon of war. I think the public health outcome of the carnage that these weapons can create gives us good reason as the government to regulate their sale.
House representatives did agree to a few small amendments to the original bill, including allowing people who already own an assault weapon the ability to travel back and forth over state lines, and one allowing local arms dealers 90 days after the law is implemented to get rid of their current stock. If the bill is signed into law, it will take effect immediately. Representative Liz Berry from Seattle has several reasons to be a part of the gun safety movement happening this session, and she is especially passionate for one reason in particular.
12 years ago, my life changed forever when a gunman opened fire at a constituent event of my boss and mentor, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. 6 people were killed that day, including my friend and colleague, Gabe Zimmerman, and Gabe is the first congressional staffer to be killed in the line of duty.
Berry is the prime sponsor for House Bill 1143, which is also inches away from the governor's desk. It would require mandatory safety training, plus a 10-day wait or cooling off period for anyone seeking to purchase a firearm. She says the cooling off period will help to slow crimes of passion, especially suicide. As for the safety training,
it teaches you about safe storage, safe handling, and how to keep guns out of the hands of kids. So with those 2 elements together, we believe that it will be incredible safety measures around firearms in our state.
Opponents claim the waiting period will jeopardize the safety of people who need to protect themselves, particularly women. Currently, a 10-day waiting period is mandatory in the state only when purchasing a semi-automatic assault rifle. Well, also likely to hit Governor Inslee's desk next week is Senate Bill 5078. It seeks to undo federal laws that for decades have shielded gun manufacturers and dealers from any sort of accountability.
This state law undoes that and allows residents of Washington state to seek justice when they are harmed by these destructive products.
Members of the firearm industry will now be responsible for adopting and implementing reasonable controls to prevent unauthorized sales, trafficking, and firearm possession by individuals who pose a threat to themselves or others. A group of young students demanding to make their voices heard are celebrating these monumental decisions. The Seattle Student Union, led by Executive Director and Lincoln High School junior Cheaton Sony, is a group of students who fight for causes like COVID safety, mental health support, and gun control. Sony says because of these new measures, he will now feel safer entering the classroom. But he says this is not the end of the fight by any means.
I feel really great. It feels, honestly, like a weight is lifted off of my chest. And I'm sure a lot of students are feeling the same way. I'm feeling relieved, and I'm really feeling like, proud of the legislature and what they've done. At the same time, recognizing, this is not everything. This is not, the end of the gun violence prevention movement here in Washington State. There will be more things.
In March, the union rallied on Capitol grounds to compel legislators to pass all 3 gun control bills. The gun reforms may be the most impactful legislation of the session, but it's the police pursuit bill that's been the most fought over. Coming up, the final compromise that could reach the governor's desk. Safer, stronger, but still not a sure thing, and it won't do anything to slow the car theft epidemic in Washington. The State House of Representatives has sent an amended bill allowing more police pursuits back to the Senate for a final vote. Senate Bill 5352 makes it easier for officers to initiate a chase based on the looser standards of reasonable suspicion, but only for certain violent crimes and DUI offenses, and only if the suspect poses a serious risk of harm to others. Democratic Senator John Lovick of Mill Creek, the bill's sponsor, says limiting pursuits to the worst kinds of crime strikes the right balance between law enforcement and safeguarding innocent bystanders who might get caught up in a crash.
We need to give our police officers, those brave men and women who go out and protect us every day, the tools they need to do their job. And this is what we're trying to do with this. There are people that we want to hold our police officers accountable. We have to at the same time hold the public accountable. And it's important that people don't feel that they can just run from every police officer for every reason that they want to.
Law enforcement leaders are upset that legislation does not allow chases in cases of property crimes like stolen vehicles. Many Democrats feel the current, more restrictive rules have saved lives. And while both chambers have now approved versions of the bill, opponents have one more chance to kill it during the final concurrence vote in the Senate. When it comes to street racing,
I went over some of the statistics. We had people killed in Seattle. We've had people thrown out of the cars. We've had people hit over in eastern Washington in Pasco. 4 people were killed in an incident, and I see it all the time. There are times that I will go near a grade school in my community, and they've been out just simply taking over the intersection, just drifting, spinning and spinning and spinning. We have to do something about it.
but that was before passage of a bill in Olympia cracking down on all forms of illegal racing, including drifting and other dangerous driver demonstrations. Senate Bill 5606 easily cleared this last major legislative hurdle with a 93-4 approval in the House. Once Governor Inslee signs it into law, 5606 has several new provisions. It will penalize the promoters and organizers of the events so that anyone who knowingly aids and abets racing can be charged and prosecuted as an accomplice. Penalties will also extend to drifting, also known as burning donuts, a stunt that sees huge crowds and cars taking over intersections. And finally, 5606 will allow police to impound the cars being used on the first offense. If the owner gets caught again, that car is confiscated. Violence on our roadways is increasing at an alarming rate. At least 40 roadway shootings were reported last year. There have been 12 so far this year in King County alone, and more than half a dozen in Pierce County, including one that troopers need your help to solve. Check out this video captured by a driver who happened to have his dash cam rolling in Tacoma. He caught a hit and run right in the middle of his shot there on the right side of his screen. Look closely. You see a large brown van driving northbound on I-5. This was back on March 29th. Suddenly it swerved to the right. It slammed into the side of a black SUV. That brown van does not stop or even slow down. So the driver keeps his dash cam rolling and he calls 911. He follows that van to an off-ramp. And while he's on the phone with 911, that's when things turn violent.
Trooper may be giving you a call if they do. It'll be from a block or unknown number, and that'll probably be...
He's got a gun! He's got a gun!
Sir, I thought you stopped following him.
Well, now troopers are trying to find that brown van. It's a 1978 Ford conversion van. It's distinctive, probably in the Tacoma area, but also spotted in Everett. If you see it, call 911, or if you know where to find it, submit an anonymous tip to Crime Stoppers through the P3 Tips app. Still ahead, a bill that makes drug possession illegal again in Washington is advancing through the legislature. So why aren't more people happy about it? And remember Tranq? The zombie drug we first told you about on the Spotlight now has the president's attention. The new warning from the White House when we return. Expect a showdown in the closing days of the legislative session over Senate Bill 5536, the so-called Blake decision bill. It aims to fix the state's drug possession law after the Supreme Court struck down the old RCW as unconstitutionally vague. The amended version that passed the House once again makes it a misdemeanor to knowingly possess and use drugs in a public place, while pumping millions of dollars into drug rehab programs for those arrested. But it is at odds with the earlier bill, which won bipartisan support in the Senate. Lawmakers there assigned harsher penalties for those who refuse treatment. The Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs issued a statement criticizing the House bill, saying in part, "We are concerned that people may opt for a few days in jail rather than complete the required treatment. We believe the House version will result in more people in jail, more criminal records, fewer people accessing and completing treatment, and a continuation of the chaos we are seeing in our public spaces. Most importantly, it will result in more of our neighbors, friends, and family members remaining addicted and continue increases in overdoses." Republicans in the Senate have said they'll switch their votes to nay if that House version stands. On Thursday, Governor Inslee signed 35 bills into law, among them Tyler's Law. It will now be a felony to buy, sell, or have a pill press machine for making counterfeit drugs.
Hope your family finds some peace after this. Thank you. Yeah.
That's Inslee after signing the bill into law, shaking hands with members of Tyler Yates' family. Yates died after he took a black market Percocet. Turns out the pill had fentanyl in it. Fake pills have become a huge health crisis in Washington. Earlier this year, the U.S. Attorney's Office announced 27 indictments following a major seizure of 650,000 pills. Meantime, concern over Tranq, a fentanyl hybrid that the Spotlight first warned you about back in February, has now reached all the way to the White House. Tranq is the street name for fentanyl laced with the animal tranquilizer xylazine. And the concoction has been causing so many overdoses, the Biden administration has officially designated Tranq as an emerging threat. The latest data available from the DEA shows there's been a more than 1,000% increase in xylazine-positive overdose deaths in the South region of the U.S. and a 750% increase here in the West region. Triple-digit increases also reported in the Midwest and the Northeast. Locally, xylazine's been confirmed in overdose deaths in Snohomish and King County, at least 12 that we know of. But those most familiar with Tranq fear the body count will only climb higher.
He didn't have a flesh-eating disorder, he didn't have an abscess, and he doesn't know how his finger went missing. And to me, that is just strange. He said it was just miraculously gone.
A narcotic nightmare.
One young lady was telling me about it, and she was saying that she used it and then was out and didn't remember anything.
Moving like a chameleon through an already dangerous drug supply.
And that scared her enough to want to go to detox.
As if fentanyl wasn't deadly enough, suppliers are mixing in a new ingredient and creating a new drug crisis from the East Coast to Puget Sound. It goes by many names.
Fetty powder, Tranq dope is the big one. Everyone seems to kind of know what Tranq dope is.
Rochelle Long is a mental health professional embedded with the Marysville Police Department. Just this month, she put out a warning to colleagues and clinics to brace themselves for the full-on arrival of Tranq. Tranq is short for tranquilizer, in this case, xylazine. It's strong enough for big animals like horses. When it's mixed with fentanyl, it gives users a brand new kind of high.
So they start dancing and they seem kind of happy and they're just having fun, to an immediate zombie-like trance, staring through you as if like a horror film.
What it does to the human body is so terrible it looks like a film effect. But in cities on the East Coast, where Tranq first spread, it's all too real.
See how it's hard? That's called necrotic. The tissue underneath is dead. And right here where you see this green stuff coming out, that's because you have pus. It's infected.
Sarah Laurel is the founder of the Savage Sisters Outreach Program in Philadelphia. She says Trank is everywhere now.
So it took us about 2 years for it to dominate and take over our supply. Whereas in Boston, for instance, it was almost non-existent in July and August, and it is now in 70% of their supply.
Sarah and her team are treating Trank addicts every day.
You want to grab Sarah for me?
We have somebody coming right now to transport you to the hospital. Is that okay?
Doing their best with bandages, compassion, and Narcan. But while it still remedies fentanyl overdoses, Narcan doesn't block the ill effects of xylazine in the body.
It's pretty terrifying, largely because we don't know much about it, and we don't have a reversal drug for it. We have to begin testing why it is causing these wounds within humans.
For people like Melanie Bettis, the euphoria Trank produced almost seemed worth it. She recovered from her Trank addiction after almost losing her arm.
I had never heard the term xylazine. I didn't know what was happening to me. And I would go to urgent care and stuff like that, and they would, give me an antibiotic or tell me I had MRSA. So it was definitely scary, but then you hit a point where it just becomes normal, and it's just another part of getting high.
Because no state is widely testing for Trank, fentanyl users are at risk of getting hooked without even knowing they're taking it. That lack of awareness here is what scares Mike Kersey with Courage to Change, an addiction recovery service in Everett, who started to see the results firsthand.
Well, I'd heard about it, but only from a couple of addicts. One of them that got into detox and said that they'd been using the Fetty powder, and it was so much stronger than the Perk 30 or the fake Perk pills, the blues that you heard so much about.
For now, it's a race against time, with Kersey trying to reach users and get them help before Trank gets to them first. People like Nick Mackey, who just completed a 28-day treatment program.
It feels good. It feels really good. I could never imagine like I've done this for myself.
Nick is on his way to transitional housing, where he plans to hang up his certificate of completion and hang on to his sobriety.
Taking that first step and cleaning yourself up is the best thing you can ever do. And you can live life. This is a good life to live.
Nick has never tried Trank, but he knows enough about fentanyl to understand that anything that makes it more powerful will make it more deadly.
I couldn't imagine. That wouldn't be a very good combination. The by itself has taken a lot of people out. You mix it with that, it's going to be completely overpowering. I'm worried about it.
Coming up, the fate of one of the most visible and versatile police vehicles in King County is up in the air. A major change for pet stores in Washington is one step away from becoming a law. Amended Bill 1424 now goes back to the House for a final vote. The bill makes pet stores source their dogs directly from breeders compliant with Washington law or brokers certified by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Documentation about the breeder would have to be available to prospective pet parents, including inspection reports and any violations that breeder may have incurred. The bill would also prevent pet stores from offering financing options to purchase a dog. Bill supporters say these are often predatory, high-interest loans that play on the emotions of hopeful future pet parents. One of the best crime-fighting tools for law enforcement all over Western Washington is in desperate need of replacement, but funding is jammed up in the legislature. The King County Air Support Unit, which helps officers on the ground catch fleeing criminals and find your stolen cars, is flying a helicopter built in 1973. So now they're asking the state lawmakers to approve a $2.7 million request to replace it.
The Bell 407, known as Guardian 1, it's the main patrol aircraft at the King County Sheriff's Office, used to help law enforcement all across Washington save lives and fight crime.
Going tower, Guardian 1, just off North Internet.
It's very difficult for law enforcement right now with people not stopping, getting away, and us not being able to do our job. If these helicopters can get on scene, they can take over the pursuit. They can follow the car, stay up with it because they're fast enough, and keep the officers at a safe distance until we know where that car stops, and then we can direct people in.
It's King County's high-flying crown jewel, relied on by regional, state, and federal agencies for help catching criminals.
And then we have the old lady here.
It first started service in 1973. a much older, slower patrol aircraft than its 407 partner.
It can't carry as much weight, it can't fly as fast, and it's a lot more sensitive to wind and adverse conditions than our 407. There's times where when we're trying to take off out here on a hot day, we're having to scrape it down the runway just to kind of get airborne, just because it's not a very powerful helicopter.
A helicopter nearing its last hours.
We have about 400 hours left on this aircraft before we need a major service, and we're at the point where we will most likely just retire this aircraft.
With its retirement, that will leave the sheriff's office with only one patrol aircraft responding to calls when agencies throughout the region need backup.
Any other vehicle that I drive as a police officer, there's a schedule to, when it hits this mileage for a car, we're going to retire it and get a new one. We've yet to do that with aircraft.
Jeffrey Floor, chief of the Special Operations Division, says they're asking state lawmakers to approve the county's $2.7 million proposal. The money would replace the old lady with a newer, used model similar to the 407, shoring up the county's fleet. Backing up their request, more than 70 agencies, from Seattle Police to U.S. Marshal Services, even the FBI, sent a letter to lawmakers about the importance of a new aircraft. Several senators have also signed their support. But there's still a procedural debate at the Capitol building on where the money should come from.
Should it be in the capital budget in the Senate, or should it come out of the House in the operating budget? That's where we're stuck. And we are still pushing, and the executive's office is still pushing for the full $2.7 million to come out of the House.
Floor says without a new helicopter, the sheriff's office and partnering agencies will be left with one less vital resource.
When they all call for helping with fishing rights, poaching enforcement, robberies, we may have to say we're not available because we don't have the equipment.
Without the full $2.7 million, the county can't afford a new helicopter. So the Air Support Unit is hoping you'll contact your legislator and urge them to approve the funding. Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of The Spotlight. Until next week, be smart and stay safe.